Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durban.
And I'm Sean Chandler.
And we are going to continue our retro reviews with The Hobbit. We are now on the second one, The Desolation of Smaug. Is it Smaug or Smaug? How do you say it? Smaug?
I go with the Smaug. Kind of just drag out the middle for a while.
Okay, Smaug. And,
now, I have no authority to say that. I am not an expert, but it is funnier.
That is true. It is funnier. So, Sean, you're the one who has the fresh eyes with this. Before doing these reviews, you had never seen these movies.
Correct.
You haven't read the Hobbit book in a long time. So let's just start with you and the fresh eyes. You popped in the Blu-ray, this week and hit play. What are your initial thoughts?
Kind of exactly more of the previous film and just feeling so bloated and so unfocused, and how so many plot lines broke the tension of the individual plot lines. But at the same time, the thing I'll add in that was a positive on this one is Legolas running around killing people. That looked pretty cool. That was some cool action. What he was doing, I dug that. But very much similar thoughts as before of, it wasn't so much the individual scenes. Individual scenes, sequences, performances, that stuff all worked. But when you put all of it together with so many stories, so many plot lines going on, I just kept thinking to myself, like, where are we going? Is this just more stuff happening? More stuff happening in order, but not necessarily a story leading to a point or to a conclusion, just stuff continuing to happen, as well as just with so many things going on, like at the end of it where you've got... they're up and half the people are up in this room with Smaug, and then there's these other plot lines going on elsewhere that are just breaking the tension. So you're not feeling the forward momentum, the urgency of what's happening there with the dragon that's chasing them around, because you keep cutting to this other guy doing something else and just thinking, what? This seems so basic. You have too much going on. How do you not see this? You're smarter than me, Peter Jackson. So that's my take.
I agree with that. It's really funny because, so right before we hit record on this, my wife Laura and I were just watching The Hobbit, just watching the second one again. And, there's a lot that is fun. I think, like you're saying, a lot of individual things in there that are really fun. But like what you're talking about, when you're getting to that end and all this stuff is happening with Smaug and all this craziness, like, it kept getting interrupted with all the craziness that was happening in Lake Town. It kept getting interrupted with all the craziness happening with Feely, Keely, whichever one was poisoned. And that weird love story between the elf lady and Feely or Keely, whichever one was poisoned. I can never get their names straight. Like, to me, there was no point in that love story. I mean, you read the book, it goes nowhere. You get to the next set of movies, it goes nowhere. So why are we spending so much time on this love story, like Lana and Clark from Smallville, that is absolutely going nowhere?
Right.
And so like you're saying, this time watching it through, I was actually getting kind of tired. I was like, seriously, how is this not over? I don't remember feeling that way when I watched it on the big screen, but watching it through this time around, it's just like, why is there so much going on? Stick with Smaug. Let's stick with that. Let's have this be our story and let's get this going.
Yeah, it seemed so odd to me, because just even as I was trying to think through, okay, what happened in this movie, because it's almost 3 hours long. A lot of stuff must have happened, and when you think through it, there's not all that many things that happen. And even some of the stuff that I really wanted to happen, some of the camaraderie where they're just kind of sitting there and you're having this time to kind of relax and enjoy this group of people, I didn't feel that, because there's so many different things, and it was such a weird mix of feeling like you didn't get enough of any one thing that you wanted, while feeling like you got too much of everything. It was such a strange... the way it comes together, and I think so much that just goes to because it was broken up, because it was in chunks, and you're telling these different stories that don't intersect with each other, they don't tie into each other, they're not tension building to a specific point. It's just, I'm seeing stuff, it's kind of like if you're watching two movies at the same time and you push pause on this one and then turn over here and watch this one for 3 minutes and then go back to over here and then go... If you were doing that, it would be weird and you wouldn't remember what was going on. And so I was struggling to remember names and some of the plot points. Like, what are they trying to do right now in this situation? Because so many different directions and changes of directions, And one of the things I mentioned last week is because of that lack of focus, you can't piece it together. What am I supposed to be focusing on? Not in the sense of a mystery where like you miss details and that's what makes it fun and exciting. Like, oh, when I rewatch this, I'll be able to put it together. No, it's a straight, simple, direct narrative that you can't follow because it keeps putting your attention and focus on so many different things that I don't know what I'm rooting for. I don't know what the big climax is, the conclusion is. It's just a series of chronological events happening in order.
You know, it's really funny because even to exactly what you're saying, as Laura and I were watching it, so you know how, Feely Keely, whichever one it was poisoned, and they sent the other dwarf to go find the weed that was supposed to be a healing plant or whatever, and all this other stuff happens, and what is it, half hour later, movie time, we cut back, and he's still looking for that weed.
Yeah.
And Laura was like, oh my gosh, I forgot he was looking for
right,
that. And
exactly.
I went, oh crap, I forgot too. Because there was just so much stuff that happened in between he goes out searching and him fighting it that it's like, I forgot. Oh, here's what I wonder. Because I have the extended cuts, and I love the special features on the extended cuts. I can't remember if I said this on the last video, so I'm going to say it again no matter what. Originally, the first movie, when it was 2 movies, was supposed to go all the way up to they're in the barrels. And it was going to end there. And then the second movie was going to pick up there and go to the conclusion. And all I could think of is, how much better would these movies be if they didn't try to extend it out to 3, but kept it to that original plan? It would have been so much more focused.
Right, and just even as you describe that, you can see that as a clear bookend to a part of the narrative. Like there's a part of it that's a journey to a place. And then there's a part to it where they're at a location in a mountain, and then I believe this leads then to a battle that involves 5 armies. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but I've heard that from somewhere. But so that you kind of have a clear line there to where you see a progression of story. Pause. Well, okay, now this is complete, and you can see where this narrative would make sense. We're trying to get there, and that's the first movie. And then you get to the second one. Now we're trying to do what we're supposed to do while we're here. And so that's clear. You could describe what that was. But then when it's not that, when it's, okay, they hang out for 45 minutes at a guy's house in the first one, and then they go on a journey, and then it just kind of ends. And then they kind of keep walking for a little while and riding on a lake, and then they're looking for some treasure, and then a dragon gets out. I mean, it's just a series of things that happen, but you can't summarize what is the central narrative of each piece of the story. You can't. You can just describe what happens, but there's not a beginning, middle, and end. It's just the set of things that happen in order.
You saw the theatrical cut, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so on my extended cut, this one has the most stuff added into it in the extended cut. So picture this bloated, and then there's more. And one of the extra plot lines that's in there is Gandalf is going around that little creepy area on the mountaintop, and he's searching, and then Thorin's dad is still alive and shows up. And now we have a mini story of, oh my gosh, Thorin's dad is alive. What does this mean about everything? Okay, Gandalf has to break the spell off Thorin's dad. Okay, spell is broken. Oh my gosh, the Dark Lord is showing up, and orcs are showing up. Oh my gosh, like there was so much crammed into that, and then they end it. It's just, they kill Thorin's dad super fast, and they end it, and it's like...
And where exactly does this tie into what's this running parallel to?
This is, okay, you remember in the theatrical cut, when Gandalf is up on the mountaintop,
okay,
and he sees Sauron for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes.
It's right there, right before he meets Sauron for the first time, and they cleverly cut around the fact that Sauron smushed Thorin's dad like a bug in that scene. So kudos to them for good editing. But that's where that was.
Was it just 10, 15 minutes of it stretched out?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like an extra 10 minutes shot like a horror film. It seriously looked like a horror film because Gandalf is in a hallway. All of a sudden this little shadow goes, right! And it's like, what was that? Oh, it's a little dwarf. So like, it was this whole action sequence, and it's just like...
And that's what I was wondering. And of course, it turns into an action sequence.
Yeah, it's a big one too. And kudos to them for how well they cut it out of the theatrical cut because it's seamless. But it's insane. And that's my biggest problem with the second one. It's just how much they kept flooding it with stuff that when you get to the third one will go nowhere and has no bearing on the conclusion of the story, that has no bearing on character arcs or development, and it's like, oh my gosh, then why did we go through that?
Yeah, man, that is weird. It's kind of, well, and so I mentioned this last week it's kind of like mixing sound, and when bad mixing, what you do is you just keep pushing things louder and louder and louder. When good mixing, you start cutting things back, and so that what you need to shine shines through. So you pull everything out so it can shine, as opposed to just keep pushing things forward. And that's what, once again, you tell me about, the scene where this other guy shows up and he's cursed. Well, that sounds like that would be boring and you forget about it. So we put an action sequence in there, and it's like a horror movie, and all of that's just kind of like you just keep pushing things louder and louder. And even with it cut out of the movie still felt like, okay, now then this needs to be exciting, and then there's a chase here, and then we'll make this a big epic romance. And everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Man,
yeah,
so weird.
Yeah, it is weird. But to jump into positives, just so that I'm not hating on everything in this film, again, Martin Freeman, I love that guy. I love his facial expressions. And my favorite scene in this movie, because I feel like it's kind of untouched by the throw as many things in here as we can, where Bilbo and Smaug have their meeting. That whole scene in that treasure room and their whole dialogue between each other, it was so close to the book, if I remember it correctly. It might not be, I might not remember it correctly, but it felt like it was so close to the book. Like, I loved that whole sequence. And like, to me, that's one of the saving graces of that movie is Bilbo and Smaug alone in the treasury having their conversation. What did you think of that scene?
I was kind of checking out, like, honestly, by the time it started getting that late in the movie, it had just been cutting around so much that I wanted to be excited. I was like, oh yeah, and Benedict Cumberbatch voices him, and so this is going to be awesome. But I was just so kind of exhausted and some other things. So it was like, this is pretty cool, but man, I was just so unengaged with his Bilbo's story in general, because it was just, there was so many things going on that, to me, the movie wasn't about him. And even the main story of going there, that's not what the movie was about. That's one thing happening, but this is another thing happening, and this is happening. And so even the parts that were really well and faithful adaptations of the book were lost to me, because it was just so much of a mess around it that it's just kind of like if someone shot a short film of your favorite scene from a book, you'd go, that's cool, but doesn't make for a great movie. And that's kind of what this felt like to me, of really the whole movie. The only thing that really stuck out that I was like, that is untouched by my frustration, is that Legolas beating people up. That is good action.
Yeah, like, it was cool to have Legolas in there in some scenes, and other scenes I felt like, oh my gosh, he's still here. Why is he here? He has no bearing on any of the story.
Yeah, and I only say that as a fight choreography, something that was like, that is well shot. I like the way that looks sense. Not even as he was so important to the story, I'm glad he was here. It's like, no, it looked cool. It didn't need to be him. It happened to be him. But I just don't have too many good things I can say about it, unfortunately, because and it's even difficult if I were to even try and give like a number rating to it. I don't know what I would give it, because I would go, it's a bunch of individually well shot scenes that are so confusing and bloated that I don't even know how to evaluate this.
Well, it's funny because I want to harken back to something you said not too long ago, because Cody Leach and I did a video, The State of the DCEU, and one of the things that we said about Batman vs. Superman is the lead character of that movie was not Batman or Superman, it was the Justice League. Like, that was the lead character. Everything they did was not to tell the present story, but to set up what they want to do next. And I feel like this Hobbit movie in particular, this middle section, is not about this story. It's about setting up Lord of the Rings, which I don't know why we need to do that, because we got that. He's got the ring, so just move on. But it felt like this movie was so unfocused because we had to get Gandalf to the mountaintop. We had to figure out Sauron's alive. We have to figure out the Nine are rising from the dead. We have to figure out this. We have to figure out that. It's like, why? We know that. We know that from the trilogy. My gosh, we know what happens. Why? Why is the trilogy the lead role in this and not the present story you're trying to tell?
Right. And to something we also talked about last week of the short amount of time they had to write it, when you're not able to write a great line, when you're not able to articulate something clearly, you tend to ramble it out. and repeat yourself. And when you have a clear idea of what you're trying to do and what you want to say, you can have a scene that's just real quick, articulate, concise, and perfect. And when you don't have that clarity at the time to make it great, you just have a lot of stuff that just kind of rambles out. And so the fact that they want to set up a prequel and put elements in place so that it works in that regard, that's a reasonable goal to have for these movies. But the way they did it was just so many scenes and doing it with excess as opposed to concise, great moments.
And I agree with that. So, as we conclude our conversation here about Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug. Do you have any final closing thoughts, or have you said all that you have to say about this movie?
I think the biggest disappointment I kind of have in finally watching these is that they're exactly what I was expecting. I was hoping that people were overstating it. It was fanboys that kind of were butthurt or whatever. But it's not. They really are terribly misguided films that needed to be much shorter. It needed to be maybe 2 films, and 2 films that are shorter than the movies we did get. But potentially only 1 movie that's concise, to the point, and well written, that's efficient.
Yes. I think
to what I just said, to what I exactly just said about, like, an efficient version of The Hobbit would be great. Actually, this is the one thing I meant to say. It was also really frustrating because the simple adventure of it, of like, we're on this ride, like, that's what the core of what made the book fun, what made that cartoon from the 70s fun, was that it was this efficient, just fun adventure that we're on. And all of that is lost when you just keep cutting it up into different pieces, as we've said before. And so all of the tone, even really the genre, is lost because what they did and just putting more in there, setting up sequels, adding in love stories, and just turning everything up and not turning anything down.
Yeah.
That's my final thought.
Yep. And I think my final thought is, especially when you look at this second part, this movie is trying so hard to be what it's not, that it kind of just ruins even your experience of what is. And so, I mean, like you said, and you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of individually well done scenes, well acted. A lot of it is good. Of course, musical score is good. Lots of things that are good. But it's so unfocused that it's hard to enjoy those moments that really are good. And so, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. So, for sure. Well, I think that concludes our retro review for the Desolation of Smaug. And so,
Smaug.
Yes. So next week, we'll get into one with a much easier title to pronounce, the Battle of 5 Armies. Or is it the Battle for 5 Armies? No, Battle of 5 Armies.
The Battle of 54 Armies.
Yeah, it feels like 54 armies. And I have the extended cut, which is rated R. So I'll be watching my rated R version.
Nice.
And you watch your PG-13 wimpy theatrical cut. Of course, mine is much longer. All right, well, make sure you hit that subscribe button, become a Durbanian, and go over to Sean Chandler's channel and hit the subscribe button on his channel. Sean, tell us a little bit about your channel.
Yeah, so over at Sean Chandler Talks About, during the work week, I put out a daily movie news roundup where I just talk about the latest in movie news. I put about 3 or 4 movie reviews out each week. Then on Sunday, I have something called Sean Chandler Talks About Live, where I go live and interact with the chat board, answer questions, try and bring people on. Durban's been on there many times. So yeah, just love to talk movies, but really I want to love to talk movies with you.
Awesome. So go talk movies with Sean Chandler. Check out his channel right now. Hit that subscribe button. And yeah, and hit the notification button on both so you get notified the moment he drops a video, the moment I drop a video, and you're notified. I'm Durban.
I'm Sean.
Thank you so much for checking out Durbania.